So for the last year, the Abbey community has been at the Spokane Unitarian Universalist Church, working with anger with our lovely meditation class that we've been doing for about 10 years. So we're right down at the end of things. It took almost about a year to get through the book. And there's a chapter that Venerable Seppel and I did last night called Different Conflict Styles. And we had so much fun last night with it that I decided that I wanted to revisit. I've unpacked it a little bit more in my mind in practice this morning. And I wanted to share. It's a very interesting chapter that sort of, here we've worked on anger for almost a year. In the class, at first, there was such an aversion to the topic. They were almost like, "Oh, okay, we'll work with our anger." But now what they're sharing and the growth and the changes in their minds on how they work with their minds has been really quite, it's been noticeable, and their willingness to share. And so last night, Venerable Seppel and I did some role playing around these different conflict styles. That's kind of where the rubber meets the road. Now, there are different styles of dealing with conflict, actually 5 of them. And probably most of us have 1 or 2 ways in which we deal with conflict when it comes down the pike. And Venerable recommends in this chapter that it's best to have skill in 5 of them if you can, because there's so many different people, so many different situations that we meet in our lives. And these different styles really address different kinds of situations. So the first thing that is, of course, most important is our motivation. What is the state of our mind as we handle a conflict, or what is the state of our mind when we start a conflict? The why of it is the most important thing, and that just tracks through this entire chapter to continually check that. The second one is that there are 2 key components to always consider when you're up with a conflict. Is first of all, what is the relationship of the parties involved, whether it's you and somebody else, or there's a group or people going through a conflict and you're sort of as an observer or a friend or a supporter, something like that. That the relationship between the parties is crucial on which particular approach, and what is the desired outcome? What is the vested goal or accomplishment of the parties involved? And depending on what that is, also defines on which approach might be the most helpful. So as far as motivations go, we really have to be honest when conflicts arise. Are we really trying to be right? Are we really trying to put somebody in their place? Are we really trying to enact some sort of revenge or retaliation? Or are we really trying to bring harmony and understanding, peace, trust, things like that? So it's so helpful to continually check, because these are really tough times for us when we're dealing with difficulties and conflicts. So what we did is we went through the 5 of them, and then we did some little role playing. I'll just sort of explain what some of the exchanges were between the 2 of us to sort of role play how these different conflict styles work, depending on what the relationship is between the 2 people and what the desired outcome, how vested they are in these outcomes. So the first one is avoidance. Circumvent a conflict by either postponing the discussion of it, diplomatically changing the subject, which is what happens at most Christmas family dinners and such, business meetings, withdrawing from the situation, or even denying that a problem exists. So those are some of the main ways in which we avoid conflicts. So in one way where, avoidance is actually not a bad idea, and we used a very, very simple example. You go into a store and there's a pair of really nice winter boots there. And they're fairly expensive, but they're at 40% off. So you say, all right, my boots are kind of getting a little bit thin. Oh, that's great deal. So you go to the register, and the woman turns to you after she scans them. She goes, that'll be $117.47, please. And you're like, well, there was a sale sign back there that said they were 40% off. And she said, I'm sorry, ma'am, but that sale ended yesterday. Right? So you got 2 people who are strangers. You weren't planning on getting the boots. It was a nice idea. She's just doing her job. So the outcome, not a big deal. Relationships, not close. You weren't going to stamp your feet and call for the manager and tell her how incompetent, how unfair the company is, and you're going to report them or something. Just not a big deal across the board. However, if somebody really comes to you like full force and has a lot of admonishment to give you, and it comes with quite a bit of an edge to where you're almost kind of taken aback. And at the end of their admonishment, you're like, okay, okay, fine, fine. Yep, yep, you're absolutely right. I was wrong. I apologize. Yeah, I'm sorry. And then you walk away and you realize very shortly after that that you're not okay. You were concerned about rocking the boat or having a conflict, but whatever happened there, the relationship might have been close or not, but you had some vested interest in being heard, and this other person had some vested interest in admonishing you. But because you were afraid, you walked away, but then you end up either talking about them behind their back or having a really disturbing mind because you really didn't come to with wanting to have an outcome of either being understood or clarifying what happened. And so this avoidance does not work. In fact, it just makes you feel bad, and it just puts you in a really, really disturbing state of mind. So avoidance does not work in that situation. The second one is control. We insist on having it our way. Now, in some circumstances, Venerable says this style is appropriate because there's some sort of danger or there's a conflict starting and it's escalating very quickly. And we either have some sort of authority, some sort of power, some sort of influence to be able to cut that off at the pass. Or we have a lot of self-centeredness and we want what we want when we want it. And there's really no negotiating as far as we're concerned. So this could be an example of, for the first one where control would be helpful, is let's say you're an adult in a schoolyard and you see a group of children bullying a child. You have the authority, you have the power, you go in there and you use your control with compassion, hopefully not with a big angry mind, is to, cut it off. I need to talk with you, give me 5 minutes, and then comfort the child and put them in a safe place. All right, so that's where control in a conflict works. However, if you're a Canadian company and you want to build a $320 million silicon smelter in a beautiful small rural town, you've got investors chomping at the bit, and you really want what you want when you want it, and quite a bit of the residents in that community have some concerns. They're worried about their real estate prices. They're worried about the water, the air, the infrastructure. Are we going to be able to handle it? We don't know too much about what you're doing here. We would really like to hear more, and we want to be heard, but you're not interested because you've got a lot going for you, and you've got a lot of money and power backing you up. No collaboration, no compromise. You want what you want when you want it, and you're really going to beeline that thing through the permitting process, and you're not really considering the impact on other people. So this is when control and conflicts does not work. There's a lot of vested interest on both sides. They don't even know each other, but one side is not being heard. That's when the control doesn't work. Then there's one called accommodation, where we allow or facilitate the accomplishment of another person's goals or needs, sometimes at the expense of our own. So in this situation, either relationship is important rather than the goal, or the goal is the priority and the relationship's not so important. So Venerable Supple and I had these role play that we did, which is very simple, straightforward. The first one, where accommodation works just fine because the relationship is important, the outcome isn't, when two friends haven't seen each other in 2 weeks. They want to go out to dinner. The last time they were together, they went to a Thai restaurant. Well, tonight one of the friends wants to do pizza. They've got a craving for pizza, but there's we were joking, Cooney's Thai Kitchen is opening up, and you want to go check out the Thai soup. In that, the outcome is not really important. It's wanting to connect with your friend, catch up, and check in and see how things are doing. So accommodation's fine. Sure, we'll have Thai again. No, that's fine. We'll see how it is. I'm not attached to the outcome because I want to connect with my friend. However, if given a situation where you are doing the Christmas dinner for the whole family and the whole family's coming to your house, it's a reunion of sorts, and you've got weeks of planning, and 2 weeks before Christmas your boss comes to you and says that the project that you are heading has hit a snag. It's a new client, multi-million-dollar client, and right now he needs you to really step up to the plate. You're the only one who's got the big picture of this thing, and we need you. I can't do it without you. This is going to bring in some serious commissions for us. I need you to work through the holidays. I mean, I can't do this without you. And this is going to be big bucks. I mean, we're talking promotion, we're talking big bucks. This is a new client, and we've just hit this snag, and you're the only one that can really step up to the plate. And because you're attached to your reputation, your attachment to praise, despite the vested outcome of wanting to do this with your family, you just can't, and not so taken aback by your attachment to the reputation and the attachment to praise is that you're not even willing to go to compromise or collaboration, saying, John, I know that I'm an important piece of this, but I've got something going on right now. We need to spend some time seeing how we can make this work for the company, but I also have something that's very, very important to me right now. We got to talk about this. But you don't, because you're too hooked in. There's money, there's praise, there's reputation, there's status. You're going to pay for it at home, but you're not even thinking that far. So there you go. You accommodate the wish of the boss at the cost of your own integrity. So the relationship's fairly close, two extremely vested outcomes. You have two very, very different goals, but you let yours slide and you don't stand for what you need because you're too attached to what might be a possible outcome monetarily or with the 8 worldly concerns. So those are, once again, where it works just fine and where it really takes a toll and doesn't help the relationship at all. So then we've got compromise, which is number 4 on how to handle conflicts, is where we give in a little on reaching our goal in order to maintain the relationship because the relationship is important, or we let go a little of the closeness of the relationship because the goal and the outcome is really important. So Venerable Supplement, I used a very typical one here at the Abbey, is that we both have got, this month we've got Gotami to clean. Both of us can't stand doing the bathrooms. We'd rather do 100 tea counters than do the bathrooms. So we figured out, after a little bit of compromising and stuff, that we would alternate. 1 week she'd do the bathrooms, 1 week I do the tea counters. Next week we'd switch. So that both of us would get the desired outcome, but we both want harmony in our relationship. That was the more important piece. And then there was this one that Venerable had in the book, which was kind of an interesting one. But she said two sisters were fighting over this orange, so they split it in half because they didn't know that one wanted the peel and one wanted to make juice out of it. But instead of sitting down and collaborating or compromising, they ended up splitting it in half. I don't know. That's kind of an interesting. I couldn't come up with another example. So we played this whole thing with the orange and the orange zest out, which was really, we made it rather charged, but it was. And then last but not least is collaboration, which involves working together to enhance both the relationship and the accomplishment of the goals of each party. Now, this one we already can surmise, and we know from experience that this is the one that takes the most time. But it has the most lasting beneficial results because it not only serves the relationship, but it also serves the outcomes of all the parties involved. But once again, we've got to look at our motivation, because if we go through all of this collaborating because there's some sort of self-interest, some sort of self-gratification as far as the 8 worldly concerns go, then it also sort of taints this beautiful collaborative effort because you've got some underlying agendas that aren't playing out on the surface. There's not enough transparency. So to summarize, so we kind of did the role play on this, and it was a lot of fun and kind of made the point. And so as a result, I thought more about this. And what Venerable says, I start with some of her summary here, that she says that these styles deal with external behavior. Important is motivation first and foremost on, the why of it, how to deal with the conflict, what are you bringing to the table, and then what particular approach would be the most benefit. And so I tied this in, thinking about it this morning, is that if we can see that the more that we are aware and know our own minds through practice and meditation, and working with our anger and reactivity, which is the cause of most conflicts, is that, reactivity, we get clear about our priorities and what's really important to us. We get to really understand ourselves. And as a result, not only do we gain more skills, when conflict arises, but in general, at least as far as my personal experience, is that conflicts generally decrease across the board because you're just so connected to your own needs, your own struggles, your own tender places where you have to work things through. We aren't so reactive. We're clear about our values. We check our motivation. We subdue our afflictions. So we're not butting heads with the world so much. So conflicts really do decrease. However, if we don't care for our minds and deal with our anger, our jealousy, our fear, our attachment, and particularly the incorrect view that my outcome is most important and that the way I see the world is the way it has to be, then small things will get triggered, will get set up from the smallest things. There will be no negotiating because our world, our little universe, and how we want the world to be is so tiny. And we can see striking evidence of this in our country right now. I mean, people with this little small universe view, this little pinhole, people are getting shot. People are calling police on each other for doing nothing but being human and going about their business. Because those people don't fit into my little peephole of what the universe is supposed to look like. We as human beings are not dealing with our own minds and not opening our little tiny universe up. And as a result, we exaggerate the danger we perceive coming towards us, the harm, the significance of a very small thing because it doesn't fit into our tiny universe. And for many people, if it doesn't fit into that tiny universe, it's extremely frightening. I mean, people are getting killed for playing loud music in a parking lot. So spiritual practice with dealing with conflict, working with our own disturbing states of mind, on some kind of level, and I'm just going to throw this word out here because it just came and resonated, it becomes somewhat of a survival guide, almost, because everyone without exception has struggles, has conflicts, has afflictions, and tragically for so many of the human family, they don't have any tools. Sentient beings do what sentient beings do, and some of us are doing some pretty scary things because we don't have the tools. We haven't been able to work on these fundamental, very powerful, disturbing emotions. So when conflicts arise, perceived truly or not, I mean, it's just dangerous. So finally, a clear and patient mind gives us the opportunity to decide which conflict approach gives us the opportunity to move through the conflict with wisdom and compassion and skill. Because it's going to happen. We're going to have conflicts in our lives. So from our side, we can work on that to the best of our ability and use these styles to really facilitate moving through these struggles that arise in our lives with that kind of quality of mind, that kind of compassion, that kind of skill. And I think it'll will certainly change our lives and by impacting on the long term even more and more people. So it was really helpful, I found. Hopefully for you too.